Hey everybody, and welcome to Cut, Transform, Glue. Do you know what all of these pieces have in common? They're all either keycaps or buttons that I've collected over the years from broken electronics, just like this old keyboard right here. They might not look like much, but trust me, these are some of the most useful parts I've got in the shop, so let's put them in use. I'm working on the Dagger project this week, and I'm on the final detail pass. The body and the weapons are pretty much done, but the legs are clearly missing something. So the first thing I want to do is add the same air vent that's on the robot's body, just to keep things visually cohesive, using of course the first couple of buttons. These buttons will be attached to a 3D printed piece which will set them on an angle, so while I was waiting for my printer to get them ready, I went ahead and worked on some panel lines. About 20 minutes later the pieces were ready, and I started by gluing on the buttons pulled from a bunch of broken calculators a while back onto the angle piece, of course with the back of it facing outwards, as I like to do in my projects. With all of the air vent pieces ready, I just had to glue them onto the leg segment, but to keep everything aligned, I first marked the surface with a permanent marker. You can also see some scratches on the surface where I'm attaching the parts. These were made with an X-Acto knife just to help the CA glue. This week I'm also bringing back some old friends, laser cut acrylic shapes. I grabbed a couple from my collection. I usually cut them in bulk at a maker's pace and glued them to the other side of that same leg segment. Again, always marking the surface where I want the piece to be as precise as possible. I also wanted to add some details to the top face of that piece. I started with a simple panel line made using a cuticle remover tool like the kind people use for nails. Super cheap, super handy. Then I drilled a couple of shallow holes with my new mini drill, which I actually built right here on the shop. You can check out the video for that project. And finally I added yet another button, or actually a keycap from a very old keyboard. The keycap was glued to the end of that leg piece, and to make it look even better, I added a tiny detail part, also printed in bulk, right next to it. A few rivet dents later and the leg was looking pretty solid, but still I had to add the same on the other leg. There was plenty of things to add to the rest of the build. There was a lot of ground to cover, so I kept going. When I'm done with this project, I'll most likely glue the leg joints and fit into a fixed pose so they don't flex anymore. The model is not that heavy, so I'm not too worried about the strength of the joints, but they need to look strong, and that's what really matters. With that in mind and using yet another button glued backwards again, I added a tiny structure to the robot's ankle. On each side of that gray structure, I'm adding a couple of laser cut acrylic shapes. One of them will serve as the attachment point for a combo of extra pieces, where later I'll attach some tubes. I'll show that part in detail in just a bit. ankle was looking great, but I had to take care of a part that wasn't detailed enough: the foot. I 3D modeled a piece to go over the whole foot, kinda like a sneaker or maybe a flip-flop. It has a slot for an M3 nut, so once the base is done, I'll have a sturdy way to secure the robot in place. Right here, I'm using a ton of CA glue to attach both pieces, and once I dump some baking soda on it, that connection point will end up looking like a welded seam. And on the outside of the sneakers, so let's call it that, I'm adding a few tiny 1mm styrene discs just to make it look sturdy and stable enough to hold the robot's weight. On both sides of the sneaker, I added a tiny anchor point, sized exactly to fit the little rod gribbly I've got tons of, pulled from old printers. The idea is that it could be used to secure the mech during transportation, or maybe even so it can pull something if it ever needs to do it in action. And a final touch was to hide the M3 bolts and nuts from the joints. I did that using a resin printed gribbly that I printed with my new tool, the Elegoo Saturn 4 Ultra, that I've been using lately thanks to Elegoo. And after what actually took a couple of days of work, both legs were finally ready, fully detailed, and just waiting for the painting process. Ever since I finished the basic leg shape and size, I had this feeling that the body could be bigger, or at least look bigger side to side, so I came up with the idea of adding a couple of shields for the energy weapons. And to build these shields, I went with this shape right here. Let me know in the comments if you've seen this one before. It's a pretty common gribbly. I of course had a lot of cleaning to do in these shapes, which I did using multiple tools. As always, I wanted to keep these pieces separate from the energy weapons and make painting them easier, so I 3D printed a part with a couple of super handy attachment points. I also had to remove the logo of the maker of this piece, cause that would break the illusion of scale of the model, which gives you a hint of what this piece was originally. A couple of shapes were added on each of the angled tabs. And then I of course repeated the same steps on the second shield piece. Now please allow me to do a quick ad right here, cause I could really use some help. If you're enjoying the channel and wanna help keep these projects going, consider joining my Patreon. Your support is what makes this whole thing possible. It's the reason I can keep building, filming, and sharing all of it with you. As a patron, you got access to perks like a private Discord channel where you can chat with me and other model builders, plus downloads of the 3D files I've been using in my builds. Thanks a ton for the support, it really means everything. Now let's take a quick detour. Recently I got my hands on a bunch of old tech, and little by little I'm going to take it all apart and add the pieces to my neatly organized parts collection, like I always do. This week, I'm tearing down what's probably the oldest hard drive I've ever opened up, and it had some pretty interesting stuff inside. But I guess not everything is truly useful. Hard drives are usually pretty easy to take apart, but there's almost always a hidden screw or two, so watch out for those, especially under some of the labels. After a couple of dozen screws that I always save, not entirely sure why, I got excited. And as you can see, the discs were pretty small, which is kinda weird, but I still had some extra screws to remove. And right here I found the biggest piece of magnet that I ever found. Super strong. But I'll show you what it is capable of in just a minute. Right now I just have to keep going and take everything apart. And here it is, all of the pieces I found inside this old hard drive. A ton of very useful and good looking pieces that I'll save for my future projects. And as I promised, here are the couple of super strong magnets. Let me tell ya, I knew these neodymium kinda magnets were strong, but this right here is crazy. I'm being able to lift my 3 kilogram, like 6-pound power drill by holding at it. I'm pretty sure these are going to be useful at some point. But you're not just here for the old tech, you're here for the models too. And I'm happy to say that this one, the Dagger project, is closer than ever to the finish line. Next thing I did was to prime each of the 32 plus pieces from this project, and this one, my friends, is ready for the painting process. And I am ready to hear your comments and color scheme suggestions, so let me know in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching.